Okay, so that is the topic that we will be talking about today, the existence of God. In this day and age that we live in today, especially with the youngsters and the young generation, they have a lot of doubts about the existence of God. I'm sure most of you who are in schools or colleges or universities, you know people who have these sort of doubts about the existence of God, or they probably don't even believe that God exists in the first place. This basically shows us the importance of this topic in today's day and age. In an ideal world, or in ideal circumstances, we don't even need to talk about this topic because it is obvious. It is something which is true in and of itself. It is basically a self-evident truth. The existence of God is a self-evident truth. So in an ideal world, we don't even need to speak about this because it is something that we have within ourselves, a belief in God. And I will explain this as we go further, inshallah. So a self-evident truth doesn't require anything external to it to justify its existence or truth. It is true in and of itself. Okay? So some examples I've shared here of what self-evident truths are. The example that the real world is real, or the physical world is real, is a self-evident truth. You know, there are people today who question their own existence. I don't know if you've come across this. This is something that is discussed in philosophy as well. But there are people who question their own existence, or the existence of, for example, this chair over here. So someone might say that this chair doesn't exist. It's only a perception of the mind, or it's only how we perceive things. It doesn't really exist. It's just a perception of our mind. Now, if someone asks you, can you prove to me that this chair exists? Would you start proving to them that this chair exists? Or would you tell them, how can you say that this chair doesn't exist? How can you say that things outside of your mind are not reality, but only a perception of the mind? So something like that, which is a self-evident truth within of itself, doesn't need to be proven. It is someone who questions these self-evident truths that needs to prove that they do not exist. Another example would be the mind or the consciousness. I'm not talking about the brain, I'm talking about the mind. So if someone asks you, do you believe that the mind exists? Or can you prove to me that you have a mind or a consciousness? That question defies a self-evident truth. It is that person who's questioning that. The onus is on him to prove that the mind doesn't exist. Okay? So similarly, we say that those who question about the existence of God, or say or claim that God does not exist, the onus is on them to prove that God does not exist, or why they believe that God does not exist. Okay, so there needs to be a change in the dialogue. Rather than a theist having to prove that God exists, it's the atheist who has to prove that God does not exist. And why do I say that? Is because we believe that the existence of God is a self-evident truth. And inshallah, as we go along, I will show you why we believe so.